that it's inevitable that they're going to be killed. Every black leader understands that if they keep going, they're going to be killed. Martin had to deal with that. Malcolm had to deal with that. Today's leaders have dealt with that. Some of our leaders today, I ain't gonna mention no names, some of our leaders today have gotten to the point that they knew, if I keep going, I'm a dead man. And they stopped. All right? Martin got to the point where he knew, if I keep going, I'm a dead man. And he didn't stop. He kept going. He said, just like, for example, in his last speech, like any man, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but it doesn't matter to me that now. He said, I'm not worried about that now. What was he saying? That there are more important things to deal with than whether or not I'm going to live or not. Martin, as well as Malcolm, but Martin was one of the last real leaders that we've ever had. Seriously, I mean real ones, that they were willing to actually die. But where was he talking about? End of his life. Because this is where you have to start with, y'all. Y'all got to start with this. One of the last talks that Martin gave, it was called Remaining Awake Through a Great Revolution. Remaining awake through a great revolution. Now for y'all, in y'all situation, it might be to become awake for a great revolution. Because during this time, the reason why Martin could say remaining awake during a great revolution is because the people at that time were awake. The youth at that time were awake. I remember as a 9th grader in high school, we used to have strikes. At high school, we had a strike, a walkout. Why? Because we wanted black history taught in our high school. I was only like 14 years old, but the youth at that time were awake. And so it was all about remaining awake, because Martin understood that there would be concerted effort to put the people back to sleep again. See, back during that time, I was talking to one of the sisters earlier in the ASU, and I was saying how the youth and the parents were together in the movement back during that time. The youth and the parents were together. We even listened to the same music, and the music was fueling the revolution, you know? Because see, black folks, we take our music real serious. They don't call it soul music for nothing. I mean, it reaches down in you. We use music as medicine. That's how serious we are about our music. And at the time, music was helping to, on a cultural level, was helping to fuel the revolution. It was fueling the movement. And you had the youth and the parents together. One of the things that's happened that Martin understood, that's what part of what he meant when he said, we've got some difficult days ahead in his last speech. We've got difficult days ahead. Why? Because he understood that there will be a concerted effort to put these youth asleep again. Because these are the ones who made the biggest sacrifices. These are the ones who showed the most courage. These were the ones who were willing to go to jail. These were the ones who were willing to face the dogs and the fire hoses. It was the youth. And so the youth now have to be redirected. They have to be diverted. So for you all, you're not dealing with how do we remain awake. You're dealing with the task of how to wake the people up again, how to wake the youth up again, and to put some real things on their minds. One of the things that happened after the 60s, if you get a chance, check out these documentaries. It's called The Century of the Self. Google it when you get a chance. It's in 4 parts. Each part is about an hour long, so you ain't got to do the whole thing at that time. It's called The Century of the Self. All right? Google that. And each day, check out part 1, part 2, and part 3 of the documentary. Very quick. In the century of the self. In the century of the self. In the 3rd chapter of the century of the self, they talked about the 60s. And they talked about how, after the 60s, there was an emphasis on people dealing with self-development and putting emphasis on their own selves and not putting emphasis on helping other people. What Martin talked about was he said that activists must develop a dangerous selflessness. That's his words. A dangerous selflessness. That means dangerous to the power structure. That means that you're not concerned about just yourself. You're not concerned about just me. You're concerned about other people. A dangerous selflessness. Back during the 60s, we had this dangerous selflessness. selflessness. We didn't care about just ourselves. We cared about other people. We cared about poor people, even though some of us were not poor, but we cared about the poor. We thought about other people more than just thinking of ourselves. What happened after the 60s and what you all were born into